formerly served as Assistant Controller Director at Freddie Mac and Chief Financial Officer of Prison Fellowship Ministries. He was with Ernst & Young, from 1983 to 1991. And since Michael is new to our conference and working with MST, I'm not going to try to throw out anything we don't already know about Michael. But in years to come, we'll have to get some good facts on him. But please welcome to the conference Michael Gullette.
Great, thanks.
Good luck.
All right, sure, thank you. How's this sound? Am I sounding? Do I make anything? All right, just a second. I need some help. There we go. All right, how's that? All right, there we go. All right, well, thanks a lot. Maybe just since I am new to MST, I can do the groundbreaker of what was on my number one on my bucket list. And I put, of course, as accountants often do, number one is actually two things here, right? I had going to Greece and Japan, which are where my wife's parents are from and where my mother is from. So that's number one on my bucket list. However, seeing that things for next year's location, I am not below pandering, and so I'm going to be changing it to La Jolla, okay, for next year. But in any event, I spend a lot of time with FASB. I spend a lot of time with the International Accounting Standards Board, and also the banking regulators, and pretty much not just the banking regulators, but any regulators that impact banking. So this project of CECL actually started, technically, I guess we'll say, in 2009, and it looks like it'll be complete by the end of this year. Now, of course, I think I said that exact same thing in 2011. And I said the same thing in 2012, 2013. So I really do believe that there's going to be something this year. What we want to do is really, I think this is going to be a good complement to what Graham just went over. Okay, so I want to help you understand and appreciate what led FASB to the CECL model. And then we're going to focus on the challenges. We're going to get a general understanding. There'll be a little bit of redundancy with what Graham said, but I think it's very useful to really dwell on these topics over and over and over. I have a feeling that by the end of this conference, you're going to want a whole meeting just to trade ideas and maybe to have kind of like a therapy support group of what you think you're going to be facing, okay? I think that also we want to I'm going to focus just on the overall CECL framework. I mean, there's some things like TDRs, PCI, purchase credit impaired loans, things about disclosures, which have some quirkiness to them. However, we're just going to leave that. We can address that later in the question time if we have time. So anyway, how did we get here? Okay, so let's go way back to 1976, and that's on your top left, where you have incurred loss. Okay, so you have a loss event that has happened. Down to the bottom there of expected loss in CECL, one that, an event that is expected and it likely has not happened. So it's one where the event is probable that a loss is incurred to one that then is expected and something that will happen over the loan's life. Okay, so now in between that time, see, you had in 1998 through 2007, you had earnings management issues. Okay, SEC came down. The biggest occurrence or the biggest event issue was SunTrust was required to actually decrease their allowances and restate their financial statements because of so-called earnings management issues. And then, of course, so everybody, including regulators, were testing and the auditors to make sure that there was no earnings management, that allowances were not too high. And then we get to the financial crisis in 2007, 2008, 2009 timeframe. So what was FASB issued, or what were the issues that they were addressing at that time? Well, basically they were addressing fair value accounting, mark to market. Okay, so fair value was, we can go all the way back really to FAS 115. That was early 1990s. But then you had the derivatives, purchase accounting, mortgage servicing rights, even the fair value options. So they were very focused on getting things in the banking industry at fair value. And as a result, the allowance was never addressed. Okay, they didn't think if everything was going to be at fair value, why even bother with the allowance? So in any event, the financial crisis comes, and the Financial Stability Board identifies 3 topics of main issues that they want to be addressed. Okay, and one is this so-called too little, too late issue with the incurred loss model. Okay. Now, the Financial Stability Board is made up of members of governmental organizations around the world. The U.S. has people from the Fed, the Treasury Department, and the SEC. So you got people, at least in the U.S., representing those looking out for the government, the banks, and the investment public. Okay. Now, they also had another issue that they wanted to address, and they thought that, and this is the Financial Stability Board, the FSB, that they wanted a convergence of accounting standards. They wanted one set of global accounting standards. And if you can't get to one set of standards, then you can at least have 2 sets that are pretty close. Okay? So let's look at who makes those standards a bit. Okay, you got FASB in the United States with U.S. GAAP. You have the IASB and they're located in London, and they have a membership from around the world. Now, the IASB, as you see, has twice as many members currently. I think they can have up to 15 members, but you see that, and they're from around the world, the representation. I would say that Europe probably has the most influence of within the board there. One thing about it also is that where FASB has just needs a mere majority to pass a standard, the ISB has to have a majority plus 1. So with all the different interests that they have, it tends to act, when you look at and you deal with people and you see their meetings, it tends to be kind of like a United Nations, and the dynamic between them with each other and FASB with each other tends to be very different. And I think that that comes out with even how they came out with their model. Am I still, is it still, okay, there we go. Now, let's see here. Okay, so starting in 2009, FASB and the ISB actually looked at 4 different models before FASB decided to go to CECL. Okay, I'm going to focus on the bottom one there, the 3-bucket model. Graham mentioned briefly about that model, that ISB. I do want to go over it a little bit because that will tell you a little bit of the understanding that FASB had, and kind of get you to appreciate perhaps what if you have Canadian operations or any kind of international operations, what that challenge there is. And at that time, so FASB, decided now we're going to go and break off, and we're going to do the CECL. It's from looking at the detail of the three-bucket model in which FASB decides to go in their own direction. Now, if you look at this last slide, in 2010, FASB actually had a version of the CECL model. They called it expected losses, and they just didn't really say anything there afterwards. And nobody really cared about that standard or that proposal because everybody else was up in arms because the primary focus of their exposure draft was to put all financial assets and liabilities on the balance sheet at fair value, right? If you can remember that. So, and there was a big outcry, and that was pretty loudly rejected. So everyone was so focused on that aspect that nobody really took much looking at their expected loss model. But let's take a look at the three-bucket model, and you see the bucket one with on the left there. Those are the good loans. And then you have your bucket three on your right. Those are the ones that are impaired. And then there's the so-called middle bucket, bucket two there, with significant credit deterioration or some sort of significant increase in credit risk. I kind of think that that's really where your substandard and special mention loans might be put in there. And so, if you look at three buckets kind of right now, that's kind of how a lot of banks kind of look at things, right? Good loans, bad loans, and loans that carry more risk. And I think in practice you probably have your Q factors that address those higher risk lines, right? And so, hey, what's not to like about that? So what FASB did, though, I think the biggest problem that they had is that they couldn't conceptually explain what the model really was. Now, with CECL, it has issues. It really does. But what FASB is trying to say is, here's what a company expects to collect. For the three-bucket model, they couldn't do that. And just like what I explained kind of works in a commercial portfolio, but that doesn't really work for consumer portfolios, for example. And FASB was also pretty convinced, and I think we were too, that the bucket one 12-month PV kind of estimate of losses in the United States would have decreased the overall allowances, I think, especially larger banks there, okay? Then if you look at this cliff effect, say you're at a 12-month, and then, oops, we're now down to significant credit deterioration, we got to go to so-called lifetime. There was this big volatility jump that came to bucket two. That how do you explain that to an investor to really describe what your operations, whether did the risk in your portfolio really jump that much, or did it really improve that much for that matter? Okay, if it went back up to bucket one. So those were really things that FASB had concerns with, and we agreed with them on that. But if you look at the complexity of the model there, we really had some problems. We being the ABA, of a few things. First, in the U.S., this even though in IFRS 9 they talk about risk of default for all intents and purposes, probability of default, and most of the banks really don't do anything with regards to, in the U.S. at least, of monitoring PDs. Right? Now, not only would you have a lifetime PD requirement to monitor, but you would have a 12-month. So you're monitoring probabilities of default for banks, newly monitoring that, but monitoring two different kinds of probability of default. The lifetime probability of default is the standard in which you determine that significant credit deterioration or the significant increase in credit risk. And so you have to define what then is significant you have a different kind of definition based on the tenor of the product, based on the product itself, based on the initial credit risk, for example, going from, say, 2 internal rating to a 3 or a triple A to a double A, right? It's probably not significant. But going from a 3 to a 5 or 3 to a 6 or something like that, or over a triple B to a double B, that's significant. So depending on the initial change, and it's based on initial your initial credit risk, it gets to be overbearing, and you could have some high-risk loans in bucket 1 with not very high-risk loans in bucket 2, and it just got to be a mess. And you got to also remember that when you're monitoring PDs, your PD of any loan will naturally go down in time because of just natural performance. So determining significant increase in credit risk would require a different calculation based on the life of your loan or your loan portfolio. So it gets to be very, very complicated, very complicated. And so with all this complexity, you're probably asking yourself, well, then why would the ISB accept it? Why? I work as part of my job with bankers across the globe too, and we had an impairment task force of trying to determine what the best model is, and we couldn't get to an agreement, U.S. versus the rest of the world. And I think this is probably the graph that probably says the most. This is not, or this is public information. It's from actually a Fitch ratings report back in 2011. Okay, so if you take the 100% there is your total allowance. Okay, now on the left you have the large U.S. banks, and the right you have European banks. So if you have the total allowance, the ones in the blue is your FAS 5 reserve, or the corresponding IAS 39 kind of FAS 5 reserves in Europe, where the red is your FAS 114, or for your impaired loans, the ones that you have identified as impaired. As you can see, you're about at 68% of the allowance for the U.S., where it's about 26%. And remember, we talk about the transition from incurred loss to expected loss. It's really all about your FAS 5 allowance, right? Because you're going to deal with the ones that you've impaired, the ones that are impaired, pretty much similarly. So it's essentially saying that current allowances in the U.S. are about 2.5, I think over 2.5 times the size of those in Europe. And for Europe to say, oh, well, we got to increase, they think they're going to increase by 50% or something like that, I don't know what the number is, of their allowances under IFRS 9, you're probably talking 250, 300% of an increase for Europe under CECL. Okay? And so my conclusion, this is just my conclusion, is that it's just a bridge too far. Remember, it's kind of like the ISB, it's kind of like the United Nations there, and they're just doing what they can get agreement on. So I think it just became a bridge too far, and that's, in my opinion, probably the sole reason why they did not want to go to CECL, because they felt that the jump was too high of a increase in the allowance. Okay? So, let's talk about CECL. I'm going to do some, as I mentioned before, I'll do some things. I'll say some things that are pretty close to what Dan said. I will emphasize some challenges, I think, that it might appear sometimes that maybe I'm contradicting them. I don't think I am going to, but it's good that you might ask those questions, because this is a complex change that will happen, okay, from incurred to expected. So first of all, the effective date's still undecided, right? Everyone that usually comes date, and when is it going to be implemented? Quite honestly, 3/4 of the time, they mention, they say, oh, well, I think I'm going to be retired by then. So it's no big deal, right? Right? So I get that same thing, FASB's dealing with lease accounting, and you just hear the same thing over and over. We'll go into that a little bit later about, because it could be 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. It's very tough. I think FASB is committed, though, to make to do it right. And I think as they've shown, they recently deferred their date for revenue recognition changes. If they come out with a standard and say it's due at 2018, 2019, and through that transition resource group saying, oops, we got to do it again, we got to change it, then I'm confident that they would do that. Okay? But let's talk about CECL. I'll talk a little bit. And I think that, Graham's already gone over with the OTTI process, applying to loans, loan commitments, and held-to-maturity securities. What I want to do here is I want to put a couple of placeholders here on regarding the expectation. And the emphasis here is that an expectation, there's no real trigger, even though I think we might have heard that there could be triggers in a conversation that was here after after Graham's talk here. But you're going to start with historical averages as a starting point for your estimate. So underline historic averages, because we're going to go over that as a challenge a little bit later on. And also underline life of loan, okay? Or as I say, LOL. LOL, we refer to it in many of our communications, and don't think that hasn't been noticed by FASB members, right? They didn't appreciate that. But it is. It is a true, we didn't have to fudge it too much to get to that acronym. Also, reasonable and supportable forecasts in the future, right? So underline future, and because we'll get into that a little bit. And just as a side, somebody from one of the banking agencies said that, mentioned one person's on their staff, that, this future, this is future expected credit losses. It should be the fecal model. So, I don't know if LOL or fecal is better or worse. I'm not too sure. Okay? So, but that was not us. It was somebody else. Okay, so Graham went over a couple of other things there. Loss effectively recorded at origination. That's a key point we'll get into. And expected life will include prepayment. We're going to get into that a little bit. How you do with renewables, and also on unconditionally cancelable open loan commitments. Okay, so we'll get more into the challenges there. Okay. Now, again, also FASB is saying no specific required methodology. You can use your charge-off rates, PDGL, whatever you want, right? I mean, FASB's basically going, if you like your current ALLL method, you can keep your current ALLL method, right? And so that is kind of right. I think that's kind of like Obamacare things. Like, I think there's some underlying issues beneath there. Okay, so here's where the issues really come from. So when FASB does a standard, right, it just doesn't go here and then banks do it, right? They're an issue. So first of all, you got bankers, you got at the end there, but you got banking regulators and then the auditors that kind of get into the forever. So, but if FASB hasn't finalized this, right, there could be change, but quite honestly, if all that FASB does in the time between that they issue this new standard, okay, but if all they did, it said, and they said, okay, forget about this term CECL and all this other stuff, but if all they did was just switch a word from incurred to expected. It basically gives the banking regulators all they need to make changes to what they expect banks to do in their supervisory process. Okay? So whether CECL comes out or not, it shouldn't affect anything here of what you're going to be expected going forward. Okay? So what are those banking expectations? Now, Graham referred to this Scrabble paper, okay? And I think that's a word you need to really write down, because you're going to want to go down and get a copy of it and check it out. I mean, currently, the current version of it looks more like FAS 5 and FAS 114 kind of put together, but it is vastly changed, and it's greatly detailed now. And it does what I consider, it instills an expectation of a three-headed monster, in my opinion. I shouldn't call it a three-headed monster, but it should be that each of credit, of accounting, and of capital working together, not only in the in their own little little silos, but together in putting together the estimate and in operations. Okay. So, what are those things? Biggest things I think. Okay, so we had integration, correct, of accounting, capital, underwriting, and pricing, all those things. They emphasize use of forward-looking information. That shouldn't, we talk about forecast the future. That shouldn't surprise us. As Graham had mentioned, grouping by common credit characteristics. They're expecting that can present its challenges, but also the proactive governance of risk factors. So you're always looking ahead. What's out there? Okay. What other factors do we need? Should we be monitoring? Okay. And how those factors then feed into the assumptions that we put into our loan loss model. Okay. So they're expecting this finely tuned machine between credit, capital, and accounting. Okay. Then banking regulator. Okay, so just to give you a little update on that. So the Scrabble update. There's been a draft. There's been responses. Most of the responses, okay, really in the U.S. have to do with making sure that, okay, you've got these standards for big Basel international banks. How can you put it down to the community bank level or regional bank level for that matter? Okay, there should be a different expectation based on your size and complexity of your portfolio. Okay, I expect that to come out. That paper to come out sometime maybe late fall, November of the year. Okay, it probably won't be too much different, I don't think. Okay. So let's talk about let's talk about what the auditors in particular. Remember, the auditors blame everything on the PCA, except for Grant Thornton. Grant Thornton didn't blame anything on that. There we go. Okay. So let's talk about what I think this means, okay? And Graham's gone over it a little bit, but I think that the biggest thing is that, remember, we had the question there about, what do our loss rates, can they be used? Yes, but they have to be life of loan, okay? Have to be life of loan, okay? And so I don't think, and I'll get to a little bit of a level setting here about in a minute here, but I don't think still, I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but there still is a vast misunderstanding throughout the industry, I think, of what kind of data exists and what we can do. Okay, so I think that also vintage analysis will be, for all intents and for practical purposes, a requirement, because I believe that both regulators and especially auditors, first of all, the vintage, you just got to show you've done it. It's not going to, it'll be required as audit evidence. It will not be a required method. It, in many cases, will not be the appropriate method that you are going to base your estimates on, But I think for all intents and purposes, you're going to have to at least show you've done something kind of a vintage analysis because first, it shows the beginning and ending of a life. If we're talking about LOL, we're talking about life of loan, we're talking about, you got to do something that says, I've captured the beginning and I've captured the end, okay? I think that it's going to show, well, hey, that year you dropped your underwriting requirements, your FICO scores or something like that. Hey, you probably, there might be a different development of your losses there. Okay, you're just going to have to show, yeah, okay, well, we've considered that. And then, I think auditors are also going to say, well, the economy was really good back during those years, so maybe those don't apply as much or something. How did you figure that in? So I just think that from a practical perspective, you're going to have to answer questions just coming from some sort of vintage analysis, and we'll show them. And then I believe that when we talk about the life of loan data, you're going to have to set up, I call them static pools. Graham referred to them as cohorts, okay? And those will be things that you're going to have to set up in your systems, okay? We'll talk about those later, okay? So to level set, remember, here's what many of us currently do, right? We've got the years on the top there, it's 2007, 2008. We get an average, and we have some charge-off rates. I call them loss rates, but they're charge-off rates, and we get an average charge-off rate of 58, right? And multiplying by the expected life of the portfolio gets us a total loan, our total loss estimate of 290, right? And that's absolutely wrong, okay? And that was the reason why I bring that out, and I think Graham also referred to that too, is because we were at a workshop held by FASB with bankers and auditors, regulators, in which a CFO of an institution specifically gave that, oh, this doesn't sound too hard, I can just do this. Wrong, that's what everybody said. Okay, so that's something you can't do. And that is because of your, how your loans develop, right? So you've got, this is charge-off rate, okay? I just refer, whether it's a loss rate or charge-off rate, and you saw the similar kind of loss curve, here where if the portfolio, on a 5-year portfolio, if you're here at the the average age of your portfolio is 4 years, you probably don't have nearly as many losses as they were, additional charge-offs as they would be if it was 2 years, right? Just because of the age, okay? Because the losses do not occur in an equal fashion, okay? Now, this is just a vintage analysis here that kind of shows you a little bit what Graham was talking about. If we just use 2004 as an example, in the year after they were issued, you had $2 of charge-offs. In year 2, you had $20 of charge-offs. Year 3, you had 30, and then 2, 5, 1, and then you had $60 in total. Okay, so your vintage analysis kind of gets you to what many people refer to as the loss curve. And I know this is, many of you probably are aware of this, okay? And I have the average down here. Okay, so this is an average of losses throughout this loss time period, right? Of that loss time period. Now, so perhaps if, for example, if this goes through 2009, so if you looked at 2010, say that came out at $10 that first year, well, it's more than the 7.4, so kind of using similar kind of patterns, you might want to just say proportionately more every other box there, so 47.9 probably be bumped up and 60 and such like that. That would be a basis for an expectation for that specific product. Remember though, you got to figure out what the specific, what's the best thing for your specific product, right? So that's the vintage analysis. That's the way I kind of look at it. It's a little twist on how Graham was mentioning. But I think those are the kind of questions, look what happened here. 25, root 10, you got to, now that you're 10 and you're just going to use your averages over the rest of the time period? No, you probably should bump those up. What happened, okay, it's 2002, well, it's a lot less than 2005. Oh, that's because you increased your underwriting expectations. So in 2010, did you increase your underwriting expectations, or what happened? Okay, so those are the questions you're going to need to answer, and that's why I think that you're going to probably have to do some sort of vintage analysis just to show as a minimum requirement. Okay. So what are the other audit challenges? We now have loan origination becomes, I think, a point of newer audit emphasis. You have cutoff now because you usually have loans closing a lot because loan officers often get paid on the loans that they close on, right? You have loans closing at like a quarter end, and you're just going to have to make sure they get bucketed into the right risk categories at that time. Right now, they're probably bucketed as non-impaired, right? They just kind of get put into unimpaired. They put 5 FAS 5 allowance. Now you're going to have to get a lot more specific on that, and also the time limits that you could be. I think kind of cynically sometimes, but you could get into a situation where you hold off on loan closings because you would have that day one loss impact. So you're going to have to make sure that there's some sort of good cutoff process. Now, in regards to that, as well as your ALM systems, if you're going to be looking at prepayments to determine how the life of your loan portfolio, if you're going to be doing that, you're pretty much going to be subjecting those to audit. You're going to be subjecting those to your SOX processes. How many people in here have third parties doing their ALM work? Is that a big thing, or is it okay? It looks like everybody has their ALM systems in house. Okay, you probably don't have them, except probably if you're under a CCAR bank. You probably don't have many of them subject to the SOX controls. Okay, so they'll be subject. So now you're going to be subjecting the SOX controls. And then here might be both from the last thing from a internal as well as external reporting issue is now the relationship of the metrics you report today, that you use today, are going to be very different compared to your provisions, right? Currently, you have increase in delinquencies, you usually have an increase in your provision, right? That no longer is the case. Because delinquencies are because your provision is recorded at the time of origination. So there could well be, and there probably will be, periods if you're growing where delinquencies can increase while provisions decrease. Because the delinquencies could be increasing less than you expected them to increase at the time of origination. Okay? So you're going to have to get together with finance, you're going to have to get a credit capital to how are we going to message this, not only to internally, but to our board and to our investor public. Okay? This will be very important. Okay? Now you kind of do this outside the accounting cycle. I mean, you have a new product and you don't expect a lot of delinquencies the first year of a loan, but if you start getting them, then that's a problem you have to deal with. So those processes have to go much more integrated into your intra-world process. Okay. Let's see, how much time do I have here? How much time do I have? Now that we got started a little bit late, so we got started at 25 minutes. We have 20 minutes. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about some other challenges that I see. Reliability of long-term forecast. Well, okay, well, first of all, let's, when I look at, I'm going to just kind of take this periods after the forecast. I'm going to put that aside. I'm not going to talk, I don't think I'll be talking about that until, we can get a question later. But let's talk about the reliability of long-term forecasts. You're going to be using forecasts in the future. And I think the biggest, when the Financial Stability Board goes and says, yeah, we want an expected loss model, and we want something that, when all said and done, whether CECL really works is whether, is whether it's relatively reliable or not. So my question actually is, we'll get into it, is whether it will really be able to reliably forecast in the future, and how do you integrate those forecasts into some sort of actual allowance estimate. Let me give you a little example here. The Congressional Budget Office actually puts out a report every couple of years saying, here's where we were over and under, estimated what the GDP was. Okay? And they also compare it. You have like 3 different lines: the administration, the presidential administration, CBO, some blue chip consensus, which I think are the economists that advance. And whether they overestimated what GDP was, or whether they underestimated GDP. And so, as you see in 2007, and this is an estimate 2 years into the future. So what they do is, what did we estimate 2 years, and then they look back at what actually happened. It's kind of a back testing, right? So in 2007, they were 4% too high. And kind of during the mid to late 90s, they were about 2 or 3% too low. And that doesn't sound terribly bad, but you're only talking about what is this is growth in GDP. What's the growth in GDP normally? 2.5, 3%, 4, 6, whatever. We're not talking 2% out of 100%. We're talking 2% out of 4%. So they're like overshooting this stuff. Well, of course, 4% over was 4% over a negative number, right? But you're talking, they're basically overshooting these things by 50 to 100%. Okay, that's the challenge you're going to have to do to figure. If these guys are real good, and they're the ones that are the big blue chip forecasters, you're going to have to take this. You're going to have to consider them, probably because when I think an auditor will say, well, it's kind of a supportable or reliable forecast of just overall. And then you have to go, well, how does it apply to my specific portfolios, my specific communities, things like that. Okay? This is, I know you do a bit of this kind of forecasting right now, but I think this is going to make it a little or significantly tougher. So I think that the reliability, and what that tells me is that if you have less reliability in it, what do you do about that? Well, in the 3-headed model, right, the monster, you have capital, accounting, and credit. You probably might have to deal with it capital-wise. Any volatility in that estimate, you have to get the capital people involved to figure out, where your targets are, how that might affect in capital planning. Okay, so that's volatility. Okay. Let's also look at just what kind of data. I've talked about life of loan and vintages and things like that, data. But I think the first question is that the smaller bank that you are, the bigger question is whether you even have enough data to form a very good estimate. Okay, and many of you will want to refer to peers. You'll want to refer to market information, and I do expect that the banking regulators to start accumulating such data somehow. In the call report process in the last few years, they've tried to get some things, and it turns out it's just, in that process, they've rejected those kind of plans because it just got to be too complicated. But I think as we go to CECL, that will kind of kick into effect. But remember that, if you have things from the banking around, you get market period data, you're going to have to still adjust those numbers to what you actually think. So you're going to have to prove what your analysis is and why yours is going to be 50 basis points or whatever less than theirs or more, for that matter. Okay? So, but let's look at this chart. I do want to make a point here. So as a proxy for charge-offs, this actually comes from Fannie Mae, and this is something from actually what they did in 2012, and it shows defaults on their mortgage-backed securities based on vintage. Okay, so you see down here on the end and the yellow, 2002, and that's at about almost 100 basis points. And then you got to 2007, and that was just a disaster, right? Okay, so they're about at 1,100 basis points. And you got all these other vintages there and in between. So my question to you is, if you're really trying to get a real expectation, actual expectation with the losses, what would you do with 2007 and 2008? Would you include them in your data? Because it's quite clear that, hey, those are extraordinary times, right? Or would you not include them in your data? Okay, I don't have the answer to that. Okay, you could include them in your data, but then you'd have to do some sort of qualitative adjustment because, as Graham was mentioning, you have some adjustments from your historical losses back to your, try to get it to reasonable or to some current and forecasted future. So you got to look at your data back there, and it's not just, quite honestly, it's not just those 2 years. I mean, you got here at 2005, you had 550 basis points. 550 is a whole lot more than 100. Okay, or if you use that, if you use the average there, right, of, we'll say about 550, if you use the average of all those vintages, you have such a wide dispersion that I think most statistical models would, tell you that you're going to have a lot of volatility, right, in your estimate. It could be real, a lot of uncertainty. So again, when we get into it, you're going to have to look at what is the actual data that I want, that I need for an actual expectation. Don't do this blindly and just take averages and things like that. You really need to do a lot of soul searching. And what that means really is I know we have a lot of credit people here. What would you do? What would you use? How's that? Okay. Remember, it's not just over time we're going to make 200 basis points, but what is that estimate at that point in time? That's tough. Okay. That's another challenge. Okay. So my big point is, what do you use? What should those be used for? Because I think, for here, here's another instance. Here's another issue. So this is just the example I gave before, right? And you see that this is a 6-year product, and the late, and so we're reporting here. Whoops. So we're reporting here 2009. That's the so we've got that 1 year of experience there, right? In the first year there. Now, if I'm trying to do using my historical data, well, look at what's in 2008. We only have 2 years of historical data. It's 2007. We have 3 years of historical data. The last vintage to have that we have total historic, all completely developed historical data is back in 2004. It's like 5-6 years ago, right? How relevant is that? Okay. Now I'm using vintages, and I'm saying, well, it's all about 2 vintages, but this is an issue, right? When you do that, so you're going to have to figure out how relevant it is because you have different economic cycles and things like that. Okay. So it might be that you might need to look, data on a vintage perspective. I don't know. These are other questions because how relevant is all of the data that is 5-6 years old, or 3-4 years old for that matter. Now, granted, maybe here, you can look at just the last few years, right? And just take those loss rates here, right? But those are the things that you're going to have to do in making those decisions as you go forward in your estimate. Okay. So, I said that, Adam said that, it's just, we're going to go back to the standard. Again, you have no prescribed methods. Again, I want to emphasize so much, we talk about vintage, I think vintage won't be what you want for most of the clients, right? There are certain parts where vintage is the main thing, main tool that you'll use, but I think a vintage in most cases will be kind of like this minimum analysis that you need. Because, for example, you have loans to the oil industry, right? The oil prices will be the biggest thing. CRE, loan to values, estimates of commercial real estate prices in the area. Those things have to be integrated, but remember that those things are going to have to be in a kind of life of portfolio basis. If you might get some data now that has, okay, based on loan to values, we think that the default rate, is that life of loan, or is that just over the next year? Often it is over the next year, because it's what we've always needed over and kind of assume that that's the biggest risk. Okay? So, where do we go from here? And I think the thing, here's a takeaway. There's a lot of information here. And you're going to have to go, okay, well, what kind of data it needs to be within our systems? Or what kind of data needs to be governed, right? Remember, you have the partnership of credit, accounting, and capital, determining what those, in order to, and whether it's in an integrated system or not. You're going to have to look at these things. To make sure whether it's in your servicing system data or your risk system data. Okay. Characteristics of the loan, credit enhancements, that's still an issue that we actually have to resolve here, and how the impact and how you define those things. But, there's just a whole lot more stuff that needs to be monitored within the CECL model, because you're expanding things over the life of the portfolio. Okay, so, under the guise of governance, I mean, I think, go ahead. Oh, yeah, I think that, you've got, you're going to look at your company's data supply chain, right? Anticipating what data needs you all have. I mean, we just mentioned a few of the things here, but, what are those risks that are out there? Just maintain how you anticipate what's needed, and you have controls, right? Over accumulation, over the computation, right? And even over iteration, right? Because you're going to be back testing a lot of this stuff and figuring out what the best way to do it going forward. So, loan operations has to be involved, right? IT, accounting, credit. Go ahead.
And all of this data needs to have appropriate SOX, ICFR controls.
Say that again and louder.
All of this data needs to have appropriate SOX controls and ICFR controls.
And I think that if we could all say that again louder, that is what we really need to come away from this whole presentation, is that the planning has to start and get many, many different areas involved, because all the data has to go under ICFR testing. Right? So, it's a big thing. Okay? I think that, you probably have your own issues with getting the right information just under this model, under the current model, getting the right information out of loan servicing, right? This probably gives you the opportunity to say, okay, here's what we really need, and really get those controls up like they should be. Okay. so where to go from here? Here's the big picture. Now, we talked about here in the DKP data challenges, that's like the detailed stuff. But, okay, from the big picture, start communicating to your organizations that, FASB has not issued anything, but whatever they issue, we'll still be doing. There's still a big difference in how we're going to be doing going forward. We want to make sure that their key data points are gathered. Right? We need to coordinate credit risk, the metrics with CDCF. Okay? That I see as a huge thing for investors, just the expectations, really expectation of results management of the stuff. And then really kind of look at how those forward-looking, I talk about the forecast of the future that might be, I don't know if it's less reliable, but more volatile. Right? How that should be addressed. Okay, but and then turning those, it's a whole governance process of assumptions back to expectations. Okay, so that's the marching orders going forward. With that in mind, are there any questions or did I?
Quite a few, actually.
Oh, good.
I think we're, due to time, I think we're only going to ask a couple of these now, but I think we're going to try to address some of these individually later, and we'll release that video more broadly. One that seems to have come up in two different questions here, and I think this is a good one specifically for you. Basically, is the ABA attempting to lobby for different standards for community banks since they're not systemically important? And also, do you expect regulators to issue CECL guidance specifically for community banks? Those are both sort of multiple of the same question.
From our how we advocate with FASB, I think it is important to create a standard that is workable by the community banks. Okay, so it doesn't necessarily need to be a separate standard. I think we certainly have separate requirements as to effective date to give community banks a lot more time. But I think that what was the issue on with the regulators? The second question?
Basically, will regulators issue
Okay.
CECL guidance?
Now, yeah, so we expect, we talked about that Scrabble document, okay? So Scrabble document, when it gets updated, that's kind of like your world expectation. No question in my mind, as a matter of fact, it's been confirmed, that the banking agencies will come out with CECL-specific agency or interagency guidance for that matter, much as we do today, right? There's interagency guidance that comes out for specific issues. There's that 2006 documents, something very similar. I think those will communicate a very different expectation for community banks as it would from a larger bank. And so with that in mind, there are things in the FASB standard that need to be, in my opinion, more kind of lightened up, so that allows the regulators to kind of to regulate at that, to supervise differently. For example, I think one of the challenges, though, that we've been saying with the life of loan data, that's something that many community banks will start having to accumulate for the first time. But I think it's, in that respect, I think it is the regulators' intent that they do get that. But there's, in virtually everything that we're doing, we're trying to make sure that the regulators at least are able to, I think they will, be able to set down a very clear, different standard.